Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you from the capital city of Abuja. I'm Zainab Bala.
And I am Ayuba. Good morning to you wherever you are. It's always exciting to know that you are watching us out there. The Daybreak Show brings you latest updates every morning on weekdays, and you can surely trust us with the news.
On Daybreak today, Independent National Electoral Commission INEC says November 6th governorship election in Anambra State will go on as planned. This is despite fears that the activities of the indigenous people of Biafra IPOB in the state may hinder the conduct of the election. The National Commissioner of Voter Education and Information joins us on the show later to discuss this.
Also, the Executive Director, Organization for Community and Civic Engagement, Abdulrazak Alkali, will also be joining us to share his thoughts on the matter. Now, today, Thursday, the 7th of October, is the first World Cotton Day recognized by the United Nations. You want to ask, why commemorate cotton? I mean, it's very important. Yeah, it is. It's of great significance, really. Did you know that a single ton of cotton provides year-round employment for 5 people on average? In the past, cotton production enabled the employment of thousands of people in the textile industry in Nigeria. We are talking about over 150,000 people.
That's quite large.
Yeah, and cotton is one of the most common fabrics in our wardrobes. After all, it is comfortable, it is breathable, and durable. Now, this is why the United Nations wants to raise visibility of the cotton sector and awareness of the critical role that it plays in economic development, international trade, and poverty alleviation. The observance also aims to highlight the importance of sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. I mean, it cannot be overemphasized how important that sector is. I mean, particularly here in Trust TV, we did a project on textile, and a key ingredient to that sector is cotton production.
Right.
And yes, there have been recent, attention in that regard, but then it's baffling, really, to know that something that used to be an industry that used to be the second largest employer of labor aside government now suffers.
It's becoming extinct.
Yeah, it seems to be going I mean, if you ask people, have you seen a cotton plant before?
I haven't. If you ask me, I haven't seen one except for the project you did recently.
I mean, many people haven't seen it. That's because that aspect of agricultural production is nowhere. I mean, the whole of Nigeria, we cannot even boast of 200,000 tons of cotton.
That's sad.
So it's something that needs all the attention, and I feel like this day should be celebrated more by Nigerians,
and should be given more emphasis. And I think something should be done in that regard as well.
Yeah. All right. For now, let's take a look at the events of 7th of October in world history. Join us after this.
African fabric is finding its way to the global stage. But Nigeria is losing out on big textile spenders as the local industry faces imminent extinction.
Behind me is the Arewa Textile Mill, established in 1963 and eventually closed down in 2004.
From over 180 textile mills in the 70s, only about 25 mills now operate at less than 40% capacity.
I'm an employee of Arewa Textile PLC before it closed. After a month, I was just like a madman.
In a day, they laid off 4,500.
The once thriving sector struggles to compete with an annual import of $4 billion.
Smuggling is the order of the day.
For manufacturers, we cannot compete.
We visit the nation's textile hubs to seek answers to why the sector has failed to return to its glory days despite government's intervention.
Well, there you have it today in history, looking at Asaba massacre. Today is a sad memorial of the hundreds of people killed by troops during the early days of the Nigeria Civil War, known as the Asaba massacre in the present-day Delta State. Wow.
Yeah, very, very sad event. A lot of survivors, a lot of people, have referred to that day as a dark day, in history of Nigeria. And I mean, whether we like it or not, there are people who will forever live with the scars, that comes with that day. And we hope that they will find comfort some way. And I believe that many would have moved on, from there in that regard. Now, today also, Nigeria joins the United Nations. Yes, on this day, Nigeria joined the United Nations in this, and that in the statement made by the British Foreign Secretary, Christian Hatter, at the General Assembly, Nigeria was officially endorsed by the unanimous votes as the new independent state member. Nigeria became the 99th member of the United Nations, one of the earliest and most significant contributions to the UN was to provide troops for the peacekeeping operation in Congo. So I would say Nigeria is 60 years old, being a member, 61 years old, being a member of the United Nations. This happened in 1960 on the 7th of October. If you didn't know that before, now you know.
It's really good, that we revisit, our history, to remind people, of our past as well. A lot of people don't know this.
Exactly. I mean, you know what they always say, that those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. But again, we have people who know history and still repeat it.
Exactly.
I mean, it's very important that we look back to see where we are from, and to know where we are, and to know also where we are headed. Very, very important segment on the Daybreak. That's why you should always join us. There's always one or two things to learn, from the show. All right, we'll now move on to the next segment of the show, talking about dailies on Daybreak. And we have the General Editor, Daily Trust newspaper, this morning to join us to review the stories that made the headlines on our papers today. That will be shortly after this break. Please stay with us.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
All right, thank you for staying with us. Going straight to our dailies this morning, but let's welcome the General Editor of Daily Trust newspaper, Hamza Idris, in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine.
We're fine. I'm fine. We're happy to have you around.
Thank you.
All right. All right, let's take a look at some of the stories here below the nameplate. The first story you would see on page 38 says 37 days after, Buhari yet to appoint new ministers from Kano and Taraba. You'd also see scores killed, houses burnt as gunmen attack Zamfara village. There you would also see the lead story saying IPOP killings, FG malls, state of emergency in Anambra. This is ahead of the election coming up in the state. We'll be looking at much more on that later on the program. You'll see also Malami confirmed our worst fears. That's according to the state governors. APC planning to rig the PDPs, they're saying. Take order to Zamfara. Katsina Abga says they are living in the past. That's according to the ruling party. You would see also the picture there showing you corps members distributing food items to pupils of LEA Primary School, Jahi, during an outreach in Abuja. Beside that, Biafra agitation madness. Countergroups likely, Umahi. You'd also find Nigeria others to benefit as Google invests 410 billion naira in Africa's digital transformation. FG to borrow 6.258 trillion naira to finance 2022 budget. Below that, Mixed reactions as NCC sets 18-year age limit for SIM ownership, others in draft regulation. That's that on the Daily Trust newspaper.
Okay, let's move on to the Punch newspaper today. Right at the top, we have Nigeria lost 221.64 billion in July to oil production stoppages. That's according to the NNPC. We also have federal government considers taking states to state court over VAT saga, Supreme Court rather. Anambra killings, PDP alleges rigging plot. Obiano kicks as federal government mulls emergency rule. And the big headline right there is high budget deficit. Don't harm our future. Experts warn government. Federal government plans more loans. And the rider says Naira fall further. Inflation will rise. Debt servicing will worsen. That's according to experts. Government will continue to borrow to finance projects. No money, says minister. And we have right there, everywhere I go, I'm asked to contest 2023 presidential seat. That's according to Kalu. IBEDC throws communities into darkness. Residents scare officials with sacrifice. And we also have court summons Fani Kayode's ex-wife over alleged document falsification. Female ex-NIS officer arrested for scamming job seekers, collecting 34 million. And below that, we have Lagos Abeokuta Highway. Protesters threaten to ground Ogun, issue 21-day ultimatum. 2 Randi Ekiti men remanded for scaling fence, raping 16-year-old in mother's room. Terrible indeed. We also have can reconstitute prayer panel against killings, kidnappings, others.
All right, let's take a look at The Nation this morning. On The Nation newspaper, the first story at the top, petrol landing cost hits 264 naira per litre. You'd find state of emergency likely in Anambra. Sanwo-Olu ex-governors eulogize Ndubisi Kanu. Protest in Ogun over Abeokuta Lagos road. The lead story on The Nation newspaper, Minister, government will borrow to fund 6.2 trillion naira budget deficit. You'd find the writer saying revenue not enough for critical projects. Buhari presents 16.39 trillion estimates today. House seeks review of judges' salary. You would see also below the pictorial there, showdown likely at PDP NEC meeting over zoning. These are some of the major stories on The Nation today.
Okay, let's take a look at This Day newspaper. Right at the top, Arise News to facilitate availability of new sickle cell drug in Nigeria. That's quite a breakthrough, isn't it? Then U.S. malls release of emergency reserves to curb rising oil prices. History as World Health approves world's first malaria vaccine. We need that right now. Looking at the state of death that we record because of malaria in the country, or in Africa, would I say. Now, federal government considers emergency rule in Anambra to protect electoral process. And the writer is saying counter groups likely in southeast against IPOB, says Omahi. APGA, PDP, SA, MEA disagree with Malami. Afenifere describes consideration as self-indicting. Falana, emergency rule does not empower president to remove governor. And below that, we have federal government will borrow to finance 6.258 trillion naira 2022 proposed budget deficit.
All right, let's take a look at the Blueprint newspaper this morning. And on the Blueprint newspaper, you'd find the first story there below the nameplate. Horse riding bandits kill 18 in Zamfara. 10 slain in Katsina. Okay, so from camels, we're now moving to horses. So
it looks like we're going back to the
traditional. They are circumventing the policy of government to stop the sale of fuel, to for more than 10,000 naira, you cannot buy fuel and all of that. So this is them saying, okay,
we can
if you deny us vehicles, we can go back to the olden days using camels and horses. But then one wonders, how do they get these horses and camels? Again, that's another question for us to figure out. You'd see below the nameplate again, residents discover killing field close to FCT minister's quarters. Wow. You'd find also shifts to digital financial services will encourage competition, attract more fintech. Niger, kingmakers affirm Barrow Kontagora emir. American expert wants US to declare IPOP terrorist. The lead story on the blueprint says Anambra Goba. PDP cries foul as FG considers state of emergency. The writer there says we have a responsibility to ensure democratic order. Malami. Perish the thoughts. It's ploy to rig poll. Ologbo Dion, Abga. You'd see also Ohaneze cautions military on escalation of violence. You'd find all of that on page 6. Below the pictorial, you would find Buhari presents 16.39 trillion naira 2022 budget today, targets 10.13 trillion revenue. Well, those are some of the major stories you could find on the Blueprint newspaper.
Okay, I think it's about time for us to look at some of the stories on our daily, starting with the Daily Trust newspaper. Now, the big headline there is saying IPOP killings, federal government mulls state of emergency in Anambra. Now, looking at the whole, insecurity situation in that state, can you wrap our heads around, the scenario?
Yes, you see, emergency entails extraordinary measures. Simple. What the minister said yesterday was that since the elections just around the corner, November 6th, and threats left, right, and center, he said there will be vacuum. They will explore the state of emergency option. So people should ask, what is it? In the past, I think we misconstrued the meaning of state of emergency. Going back to 2004 in Plateau, and then 2006 in Ekiti, during the time of former President Olusegun Obasanjo. When state of emergency was declared, then the governors were removed. But later, lawyers went to court, and then they cited Section 308 of the Nigerian Constitution. It says you can have a state of emergency via a proclamation and then the approval by the National Assembly. And if the president succeeds in getting the consent of the National Assembly, meaning he can deploy troops, more troops, to ensure there is peace so that governance will continue. So in summary, what we are expecting in Anambra, if what the Attorney General said in essence, is that if violence continues, it means they will deploy more troops. But I don't foresee them removing the governor. And then elections must hold across the state. Now,
talking about deployment, of troops, the police they just deployed a new commissioner, after the deadly gun attacks to that state. Do you think this will change anything?
Hopefully, because sometimes if you have a change, most likely the new helmsman will go with fresh ideas to address some of the issues on ground. It's just like we journalists. If you live in Abuja, the likelihood is that you might not see some good news. But if you travel to Kaduna, or you go to Kogi, or you go to Lagos, you realize that lots of stories. Yeah, unlike reporters that are on ground there. It is the same thing. So the new commissioner of police will most likely deploy other methods to change the trend. But you can see it is politics at play, fireworks. PDP saying one thing, ABGA saying another.
I mean, just like we're seeing the story that the blueprint is leading with. PDP cries foul as FG considers state of emergency. I mean, they are already thinking in the line of, oh, okay, this is a plan to rig the election and all of that. So bringing out the issue of trust here, you know, in the system to, you know, do the needful in times like this.
They have right. Yes, they have right to suspect. Yes, they have right to suspect, because what they are saying is, if you consider happenings in other parts of the country or neighboring states, the killings going on in Imo, in Abia, there are more than what you have in Anambra. It is just in the last few days that you have increased killings in Anambra. Even the Commissioner for Information, what he said yesterday was that up till now, these wanton killings, you have about 15. But he admitted that yes, being one of the safest states in Nigeria, and then they have recorded up to 15 different incidents of killings is on the high side, but that should not justify the declaration of state of emergency. The ruling party in Anambra, you know, they said, look, go and impose state of emergency in Katsina. Go and do that in Zamfara. Go and do that in Benue. Go and do that in Kogi, Kaduna. You know, they mentioned about 7 states that the federal government should do that, not in Anambra, because they feel that declaring the state of emergency will give the ruling party the luxury to rig. Yes.
Okay. Now, there seem to be concerns about, you know, escalation as a result of the deployment of the military, you know, in that zone. Is that a justifiable concern?
I think there is the need to restore peace, because peace is priceless, but you should do that with sincerity of purpose, not on ad hoc basis. Because we are going to have election in Anambra does not mean that the powers of the governor should be usurped completely. Yes, but people should be able to go out and vote in an atmosphere of freedom. Not only in Anambra, it's an off-season election, meaning the government should be able to mobilize enough resources to secure the lives of the people. But beyond that, we have issues in other places. You just you know, read one of the headlines in the papers where miscreants, terrorists, you know, using horses to wreak havoc. So government should see the entirety of Nigeria that it needs emergency.
Right.
Yes. This is
all right. Another issue about is about the presentation of the 2022 budget by the President at the National Assembly today. I mean, there are already concerns about, you know, the borrowings that could now take place based on the proposals that we've seen, over 6 trillion naira. The government is saying that we have to borrow for us to be able to finance capital projects and all of that. How much are you concerned about the borrowings that we've been, you know, making?
We're all concerned, especially the usage. Yes, every country around the world borrows. Even the advanced economies, like the United States, they borrow. But what they do with the money they get is quite different from what obtains here. You look at budget performance, in most cases in other places it is 100%, meaning whatever the president, the governor, local government chairman or county leader, you know, projected before the end of the year, you must have to execute it, since the budget corresponds with the money, including what you borrow. But here, the budget performance tends to be disappointing, and then you can see people are not keen in even watching budget presentations by the president, by the governors, because it has turned to a ritual, just simple ritual that, okay, every year we will present a budget. Maybe when he reviews the performance of the 2020 budget, we will see how far. Is it up to 50%, 60, 70? And then is it ongoing projects, or some of the projects have been concluded? Besides, government must borrow. This is the fact, because you can't just not borrow to provide basic services.
Now, the minister is saying that the revenue Nigeria is generating is not enough to fund or to pilot some of these capital projects. What do you think about that?
Well, she's telling the truth, and the fact is we run a mono economy for a very long time. We were deceived by the oil. Yes, and then the prices collapsed. Today, you said, it's World Cutting Day. In the past, if you go to Kaduna around this time, you will be very happy to see hundreds of, people working in the cutting mills, textile industries. If you go to Funtua, you see people going to the Janari. While traveling, you see the plantation there. We have the arable land. We up till now we have it, but we refuse to harness it. People still farm cutting using the manual method, which is
strenuous.
Well, good. So, assuming the economy is vibrant, meaning we expand to farming, IT, you understand, we will generate more money. So we can't continue to borrow, because by the time you reach the threshold, nobody will give you money. So meaning what we are borrowing now, we should invest it heavily in infrastructure that will facilitate other sectors, maybe in the coming years, to support the running of the economy.
All right, we have to end the review here. We have in the studio the General Editor of Daily Trust newspaper, Hamza Idris, who has been giving us his thoughts on some of the stories that made the headlines. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. All right, we will take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at the issues of insecurity in Anambra State ahead of the governorship election. And we will be having joining us Festus Okoye, the National Commissioner Voter Education, in the studio right here. Stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
Suleiman, Aya, and Tari, all from the Sulubawa clan, with a unique wealth of culture and deep love for cattle, which truly reflects their sense of family. But over time, everything changes with no lands for grazing. Experience the incredible story of the Fulani people. Loved ones they must protect, the journey they must take.
This is the spot, a marking signifying the starting point of the dam.
No, somebody? No, sorry. 40. No compensation has been given to any community member, and no place has been earmarked for their relocation.
Since why they go, they never come back.
And this is where the hydroelectric power dam is supposed to be constructed. But for many years, the story has remained the same. This is the site of the proposed hydroelectric power station in Mambila. But the irony is, no construction has even commenced yet. Suleiman, Aya, and Tari, all from the Sulubawa clan, with a unique wealth of culture and deep love for cattle, which truly reflects their sense of family. But over time, everything changes with no lands for grazing. Experience the incredible story of the Fulani people. Loved ones they must protect, the journey they must take.
All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you from the nation's capital. Now, we move into our first discussion of the day and talking about insecurity and the coming governorship election in Anambra State. It is exactly 30 days to the Anambra governorship election, counting from today. But concerns over safety has continued to mount. On May 24, 2021, gunmen burnt down the state headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Commission amidst a rise in attacks on INEC offices nationwide. In August 2021, INEC chairman and National Commissioner in charge of publicity and voter education, Festus Okoye, revealed that half of the non-sensitive materials pre-delivered for the administrative task of the election were destroyed in the May attack. INEC in September revealed plans to deploy at least 25,000 INEC officials on election day. However, the planned storage of non-sensitive materials in the INEC zonal office in Owerri, Imo State caused controversy. The PDP, YPP and ABGA questioned the decision to store materials in a state with an APC governor, but INEC stated that the materials could not be stored in Anambra due to the May attack on INEC state headquarters. Other INEC plans were less controversial, such as the planned use of the new bimodal voter accreditation system device after it was successfully tested during the Isoko South Delta State constituency by-election 2 months before Anambra election day. INEC will today present voters' register and publish final list of candidates for the election. We have in the studio the National Commissioner, Voter Education and Information, Festus Okoye, to wrap our heads around the preparations ahead of the election. Good morning, and it's good to have you join us.
Yeah, good morning.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Now, we are, I would say, sort of confronted with a very unique challenge in this case. We have INEC planning for an election, and also there are concerns about safety of both materials and officials in the election. How prepared is INEC for this election?
Well, you know that constitutionally and legally, the remit of the Independent National Electoral Commission is to organize, undertake, and supervise elections. And that's what we know how to do. And based on that, and also based on the fact that under Section 178, subsection 2 of the Constitution, the period for the conduct of the Anambra governorship election, and indeed all governorship elections, has been constitutionally circumscribed. So based on that, we've been working assiduously to make sure that we deliver a very good election in Anambra State. And as you pointed out in your promo, that was why we delivered over 50% of the non-sensitive materials required for the conduct of the election way before this period. But unfortunately, those materials went up in flames. So at the level of the Independent National Electoral Commission, we are preparing. And as the chairman revealed a few days ago, we lost 6 utility vehicles during the attack on the 24th day of May 2021. We lost our collation center or pavilion. We lost over 326 generating stations that were mopped up from the local, the 21 local government areas and the 326 wards in Anambra State. Part of the main building was also burnt and vandalized. But what we have done is to restore some of these facilities. We fully restored the stores that were burnt, and the stores will be ready to receive materials any moment from now. We've restored the collation center and pavilion. We've also restored the main headquarters of the commission. So on the part of the commission, we are moving ahead with preparations for the election.
Okay, now in terms of safety for materials and officials, what have you put in place so far?
Well, as I pointed out, our task is to organize, undertake, and supervise elections. Now, for the Anambra governorship election, we are going to deploy at least 25,009 ad hoc staff. And this excludes collation officers, this excludes our permanent staff that will also perform one duty or the other in Anambra. But totally, we project that we may deploy over 26,000 staff for the Anambra governorship election. Now, what we normally do is that for the 5,720 polling units in Anambra State, we are going to post youth corps members as presiding officers. And then for assistant presiding officers 1, 2, and 3, we are going to have students of federal tertiary institutions to complement the youth corps members. And you know, these are sons and daughters of people who are at the prime of their lives. So we have a responsibility, we have a duty to make sure that no harm befalls them. And based on the threat level in Anambra State, we convened an emergency meeting of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, and we've deliberated with the security agencies both at the national level and at the state level, and also at the local government level. And measures are being put in place to make sure that the safety of the corps members is paramount. So we've emphasized greater synergy between the security agencies in terms of sharing information and also in terms of sharing intelligence. Yeah. And they have assured us that they have the situation under control.
Okay, now this morning we're seeing on the papers, virtually all the papers, leading with the story about, you know, a state of emergency possibly to be declared in Anambra State, and is already generating some, you know, controversy about maybe over militarization of the process, the opposition party, raising some suspicion there and on all of that. Now, how do we guarantee confidence, in this process?
Well, let me put it this way. Now, I've made it very clear, and the chairman has also made it very clear, that if you look at the provisions of section 178, subsection 2 of the Constitution, that particular section is problematic. It's problematic in the sense that the Constitution obligates the Commission to conduct governorship election within a certain period. It says you cannot conduct a governorship election 150 days before the terminal date of the incumbent, and not later than 30 days before the terminal date of the incumbent. Now, the implication is that we must conduct the election within this specified period. And the Supreme Court has said repeatedly that that particular provision is cast in stone, is immovable. And that if you are unable to conduct election within that constitutionally circumscribed period, you cannot conduct the election anymore. And whatever you do becomes null and void. So, from our own point of view, there are only four options available to the country. The first option is to proceed and conduct the governorship election within the constitutional framework, and that's exactly what the Commission is pushing. The second option, which for me may not really be available in this circumstance, is the option provided in section 180, subsection 3 of the Constitution, which says that if the Federation is at war, in which the territory of Nigeria is physically attacked, that the President can, in conjunction with the National Assembly, extend the tenure of the incumbent governor by an initial period of 6 months, pending the time that a situation is obviated. I believe that this is not available to us because I'm not too sure that the Federation is at war and no territory of Nigeria has been physically attacked in the true sense of the word. The second option that is available is the option under section 191, subsection 2 of the Constitution, which says that if the governor and the deputy governor, for instance, have been impeached, or if one dies and the office of the governor and deputy governor becomes vacant, that the Speaker of the State Assembly can take over and complete the unexpired term of office of the incumbent. In other words, he can only operate within the confines of that 4-year period and no more. So if there's still gap, like 6 months, he has to conduct the election within 3 months, but it must fall within that 4-year period. And this one is not available. So the only option available, if we are unable to conduct the election, is the option under section 305 of the Constitution, which says that if there is breakdown of law and order, or even threat of breakdown of law and order in the Federation or any part of it, and requiring extraordinary measures to restore order, that one, the President can impose a state of emergency through a proclamation. And under subsection 4 of 305, the governor, with the concurrence of 2/3 majority of the House of Assembly, can also request the President to impose a state of emergency if there's threat of breakdown of law and order or actual breakdown of law and order. But the President can also bypass the governor if within a reasonable time the governor does not make that particular request. The President can move ahead and impose a state of emergency. So the point I'm trying to make is that these ones has nothing to do with the Independent National Electoral Commission. These are powers that are reserved for the President, for the National Assembly, for the governor and the State Assembly.
Okay. So, but based on the reports that you've been getting, will it be necessary to declare a state of emergency with what we know so far?
Well, the business of the Commission is to organize, undertake, and supervise elections. It is the responsibility of the Nigerian police force to provide election security, because the police is the lead agency in terms of election security. The intelligence available to the Commission is not the intelligence available to the President. The level of intelligence and the level of security report available to the President is completely different from what is available to us. Our business is to insist that the voters must be adequately protected, that election staff must be adequately protected, and that we should have a conducive environment for us to organize, undertake, and supervise elections.
Okay. Now, do we hope to see, the deployment of technology in the conduct of this election?
Definitely. This particular commission wants to deepen democracy through the use of technology. And based on that, we've been working very, very hard to make sure that we conduct a very good election. So one of the things we have done, as you are aware, is that we did a continuous voters registration exercise throughout the federation. But for Anambra, based on the fact that it has a governorship election, we not only conducted the exercise in our state office, we also conducted the exercise in all the 21 local government areas. And we also deployed the exercise to the 326 registration areas or wards in Anambra State. So based on that, the figure for Anambra is high. So what we have done is to integrate this supplementary register that we have compiled with the main voters register, which will be presented to the political parties today in Anambra State. So we use technology for this particular purpose because we created an online portal through which mostly young Nigerians pre-registered before they capture their biometrics at the level of at our state offices, local government offices, and registration areas. Secondly, as you pointed out, the bimodal system will also be deployed in Anambra State. We tested it during the Isoko State Constituency election, and we believe that it is robust enough, is ruggedized, and we are going to deploy it for the purposes of voter accreditation in Anambra State. In other words, when you get to the polling unit, first of all, we try to capture your fingerprints. If we are unable to capture your fingerprints, then we capture your facials. If we are unable to capture your facials, three things are possible. One, there's a possibility that the permanent voter's card with you does not belong to you. Secondly, it's possible that you are trying to engage in multiple voting. And three, it's possible that you are engaged in identity theft, in which case we are not going to allow you to vote. So we are going to deploy technology for this election. Now, the bimodal system will also be used to upload polling unit results into our INEC result viewing portal. So these three things are going to come into play during the Anambra governorship election.
All right. Now, another important aspect of this process is the integrity of the process.
Yes.
Given the circumstances, we're already seeing, political parties raising concern about the integrity, especially when you now have to keep certain materials in neighboring states, because of, the situation in Anambra State and all of that. How can you guarantee, to stakeholders in this process that the election is going to be free and fair, and that the integrity of the process is guaranteed?
Let me make this very clear. In all our processes and in all our procedures, we try to carry all the critical stakeholders along. And based on that, tomorrow we are going to have a meeting, an emergency consultative meeting with the leaders of the political parties. But that does not mean that political parties are going to dictate to the commission how to run our processes and our procedures. The Independent National Electoral Commission is the umpire. We are the regulator of political parties, and no political party will be allowed to regulate us. So what we can only do is to consult them in terms of certain things we do, so that all of us will be on the same page. But no political party will regulate the commission. We regulate them, and they cannot dictate to us. Now, on this whole issue about storage of materials, INEC materials and the materials we use and the equipment we use in the conduct of elections are not obtained off the shelf. Some of them takes 6 months to procure. Some of them takes 1 year to procure. Some of them are not even procured within the country. So the implication is that we have to procure some of these materials and some of this equipment and store them preparatory to an election. And some of these by-elections do not give us sufficient time. For instance, if there's a death in relation to a member of the National Assembly, for instance, the moment the Speaker declares a vacancy, the commission has 30 days within which to conduct the election. And there is very little you can do within a period of 30 days. So what this commission has done is to establish what we call zonal stores to serve the various zones. We have a zonal store serving the North Central. We have a zonal store serving the Northwest. We have a zonal store serving the Southeast. We have a zonal store serving the South-South, and so on. What is it that we have in these zonal stores? Cubicles, ballot boxes, biro, sellotape, and so on and so forth. Those non-sensitive materials that are required for the conduct of election. So when our office in Anambra State was burnt, we reasoned that it may be better and cheaper for us to just move some of these non-sensitive materials direct to the local governments bordering Anambra. If you know the geography of Imo State and Anambra State, you will find out that from Owerri to Ihiala may take you less than 20 minutes. But from Oka to Ihiala may take you almost 45 minutes. From Owerri to Ekusigo local government will take you maybe 20 to 30 minutes. But it may take you more if you are coming in from Anambra to those places. So we reason that it may be better to just take those materials from our zonal stores and just drop them in those local governments. And then people started raising all sorts of issues, all sorts of concerns that for us does not make meaning. So what we have done is that since we have completed our zonal store, the office in Anambra and the stores that were burnt, we have now moved, and we are going to move the materials both from our headquarters here direct to our office in Anambra, and then move some of the materials direct from our zonal stores in Owerri direct to our office in Oka, and then from there we now deploy to the various local governments since the store is ready. So we really do not have concerns. All those things that are raising are the realm of politics, and it has nothing to do with us. Our business is to conduct free, fair, and transparent election in Anambra State, and our processes and our procedures are very clear and they are very, very transparent. And all the political parties will be involved in the movement of these materials, both from our Oka office to all the local governments. But for sensitive materials, the period for the movement of sensitive materials has not arrived, because the sensitive materials go direct to the central bank. And before we move anything from the central bank, the political parties come for inspection, and then the movement is done with them.
All right.
Yes.
Now, with regards to the deployment of technology in this process,
yes,
another issue that have generated a lot of conversation is the issue of e-transmission of results and all of that. This
yes.
is something that INEC has used, in the past. Are we expecting to see that in this Anambra election, given the circumstance?
Let me put it this way. What we are going to do in Anambra will be to upload from EC8A, which is the polling unit level result, into our INEC result viewing portal, for purposes of transparency or for purposes of building trust. So that if you are internet savvy, if you have internet facilities, you can view these reports as they come in. Now, I think that there's some form of misunderstanding in relation to some of these issues. Under Section 78 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Section 118 of the Constitution, as well as under item 15 of Part 1 of the third schedule to the Constitution, the Independent National Electoral Commission does not share the power of conducting and supervising elections with anybody. We don't share that power. Secondly, under Section 160 of the Constitution has given us the power to impose duty and responsibility on any agency or organ of government that we believe has competence and expertise in relation to the work we do. But no such agency has a corresponding right to impose duty on the commission. So, based on that, we believe that the processes and procedures for the conduct of elections, including the transmission of election results, resides with the Independent National Electoral Commission. Now, what we are saying is that It is one thing to transmit the results of election. It is another thing for those results you have transmitted to have constitutional and legal efficacy and potency. Section 63 and Section 65 of the Electoral Act are the operative sections in relation to the collation of results. And Section 63 says that it is the duty of the presiding officer at the polling unit to sort out the votes that have been received by political parties, then count the votes, and then enter those votes in a form designed by the Independent National Electoral Commission, in a form. And then he will sign and stamp the form, and then get the polling agents or agents of political parties to also sign, and thereafter he gives each of them a copy. And then he carries everything together with security agencies, together with the polling agents, to the next level, which is the registration area collation center, where the collation officer will also enter all those figures in a form called from EC8B, and then it goes to next level. What we are saying, asking the National Assembly to do, is to amend the provisions of the Electoral Act relating to collation of results, because those are the forms that are recognized legally in law for the purposes of making a determination of who has won election and who has not won election. So our issue has nothing to do with the issue of whether we have power or right to transmit election results. Do we have power? Yes, we have the power to do that. Can we introduce electronic voting machines in the electoral system? Yes, we can, because Section 52, subsection 2 of the Constitution was amended by the National Assembly of the Electoral Act, of the Section 52 of the Electoral Act has been amended by the National Assembly to give the Commission the power to determine the mode of election. So we have power to do all these things. The only thing we are saying is amend Section 63 and 65 and the other corresponding sections to allow us to also collate results electronically, not to transmit results electronically.
Okay. Now, many will be of the opinion that because of the unrest in Anambra State,
yes,
the elections be postponed. Could there be any form of threat that could force the Commission to postpone the elections?
The Commission can only reschedule within the ambit and confines of Section 178 of the Constitution. And what Section 178, if I may just read directly, what Section 178 of the Constitution says is that it says that if you read from Section 178 subsection 1, it says that an election to the office of a governor of a state shall be held on a date to be appointed by the Independent National Electoral Commission in accordance with the Electoral Act. The subsection 2 of Section 178 says that an election to the office of a state governor shall be held on a date not earlier than 150 days and not later than 30 days before the expiration of the term of office of the last holder of the office. So, under Section 26 of the Electoral Act, we can shift the election by a month or by 2 months. But any election we conduct 29 days to the terminal date of the incumbent is null and void.
All right, now we also have another issue, with the sit-at-home order in the Southeast and all of that, and also there are concerns about voter apathy, about people feel intimidated not to come out and all of that.
Yes.
How can people be ensured that they will be their safety is guaranteed in this whole process?
Well, the Commission, within its own limited powers in relation to issue of security, is engaged in confidence-building measures. That's why we have consulted with the security agencies. We've received briefings from them. We've received reports from them. We've heard what they intend to do in restoring confidence and public order and public safety in Anambra State. Tomorrow, we are going to meet with the leaders of political parties and also rub minds with them in relation to the maintenance of peace and security in the place. We are also going to consult with traditional rulers. We are going to consult with religious leaders. We are also going to consult with civil society groups and organizations and other critical stakeholders in the state to make sure that we build enough confidence in the people to assure them of their safety and security. But you know, this whole thing goes both ways. If you saturate the state with security, two things are likely going to happen. There's a possibility that the confidence of the people will be restored and they can go out to go and vote during the election in terms of the fact that they will feel there's a sense of security. The flip side of it is that they may also feel intimidated by the saturation of security in the place, and then they decide to keep off from the polling units. And that's why I believe that we must engage in multi-stakeholder action to make sure that we build the confidence of the people on the need and desirability of this particular election, and also on the dangers of going the route of a state of emergency in the place. It is much better for us to have an election that is conducted under a civil atmosphere than for us to have an election conducted under a state of emergency.
Right. All right. Let's go on a quick break. And then when we come back, the National Commissioner, Voter Education and Information, INEC, is still with us in the studio. We'll be rounding up the discussion shortly. Please stay with us.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the Trust TV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search Trust TV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
African fabric is finding its way to the global stage. But Nigeria is losing out on big textile spenders as the local industry faces imminent extinction.
Behind me is the Arewa Textile Mill, established in 1963 and eventually closed down in 2004.
From over 180 textile mills in the 70s, only about 25 mills now operate at less than 40% capacity.
I'm an employee of Arewa Textile PLC before it closed. After a month, I was just like a madman.
In a day, a load of 4,500.
The once thriving sector struggles to compete with an annual import of $4 billion.
Smuggling is the order of the day.
For manufacturers, we cannot compete.
We visit the nation's textile hubs to seek answers to why the sector has failed to return to its glory days despite government's intervention.
Welcome back to Daybreak on Trust Television. We are still discussing security and the Anambra governorship elections. And we have Mr. Festus Okoye, Information and Voter Education of the Independent National Electoral Commission.
So I think there's a question we are supposed to ask right now, which has to do with court orders regarding candidates of political parties. Has INEC gone as far as resolving some of these issues?
Well, you know that under Section 87 of the Electoral Act, the conduct of party primaries is slightly within the exclusive realm of the various political parties. And the Commission has made it very clear that it's not going to micromanage any political party. What the political parties are supposed to do is to conduct clean party primaries that satisfies the legal requirements under Section 87 and Section 285 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Now, some of the political parties did not manage their party primaries well. And based on that, we had what we call the multiplicity of actions and multiplicity of court orders, even from courts of coordinate jurisdiction. So that created serious problem and serious tension, especially for the electoral management body, because some of the orders were from courts that did not have substantive and geographical jurisdiction to entertain them. And then the Chief Justice of the Federation was worried, the President of the Court of Appeal was worried, and so they decided to take action. And I'm happy to report that the President of the Court of Appeal decided to set up a special panel to hear appeals from all over the Federation relating to these orders from courts of coordinate jurisdiction. And the Chief Justice of the Federation also invited the Chief Judges of some of the states to explain and rub minds with them on really what happened in relation to those matters. But there has been some level of order now. And that's why today we are going to release the final list of candidates that are going to contest the governorship election. But having said that, let me make it clear that some of the matters have gone to the Supreme Court. And under Section 287 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Independent National Electoral Commission is under a constitutional obligation to give effect to orders and judgments of courts of record. And the Supreme Court is a court of record. In fact, is the final court in the land. Whatever order or whatever judgment the Supreme Court gives, the Independent National Electoral Commission must comply. So if tomorrow, despite the fact that we've published the final list of candidates, the Supreme Court says that the name of the person we publish is not the name of the person that ought to be published, definitely will affect that particular change. But as of today, there has been some level of calm and some level of order and sanity in relation to this multiplicity of court orders.
All right. Now, in terms of regulation of some of these political parties, this question I would say is more like just an addition to all the conversation. Some political parties, the way they field in candidates, sometimes some have raised concern about the kind of scrutiny that goes into deciding who becomes a candidate, representing a particular party. Does INEC has any role, in terms of regulating the credibility of the candidates that eventually emerge?
Well, the role assigned to the Commission by the Constitution and the Electoral Act is very, very minimal. The Constitution and the Electoral Act expects the political parties to do due diligence. In other words, if you look at the law, if a political party feels a candidate that is not qualified, the political party has committed an electoral offense. So, under Section 285 of the Constitution and also under Section 31 of the Constitution of the Electoral Act, the Commission receives the nominated list of candidates and their personal particulars. And within 7 days, we are obligated to publish that in the constituency where the candidate intends to contest election. And it says that any individual who believes that any of the information supplied by the candidate is false can approach a high court, the Federal High Court or the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory. And if the court believes that the candidate has supplied false information, the court will issue an order disqualifying the candidate. So that power is reserved for the political parties and also for individuals in Nigeria to do. Our role is very, very limited in terms of scrutinizing the particulars of candidates, whether those candidates are qualified or whether those candidates are not qualified.
So are there any sanctions for political parties who default in this instance, where they field in candidates that are not qualified for the election?
It's an electoral offense, and the Commission reserves the power to take them to court. And if the court comes to the conclusion that they offended the provisions of the law, the necessary fine will be imposed. But we have made it very clear as an electoral management body that our preference will be a situation where the National Assembly and the Executive will bring into being an electoral offences commission and tribunal that will be exclusively charged with the responsibility of investigating, arresting and prosecuting electoral offenders. Because the task of conducting registration of voters, registering political parties and monitoring their activities, conducting elections, and also engaging in post-election activities is huge. So we believe that this aspect of electoral legal framework should be removed from the commission and given to a separate agency that will run it very professionally and will also run it very competently, because as at now, it's just as far as the commission is concerned, it's a surplusage, and we don't have a power to do, we don't have the power to arrest, we don't have the power to investigate, we can only prosecute. And sometimes, by the time the police carries out arrest, finishes investigation and transfers to the commission, the case file has gone cold.
All right then. Well, at this point, we want to end this discussion. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We hope to have you another time.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
We've been speaking with the National Commissioner, Voter Education and Information, Independent National Electoral Commission, Festus Okoye, and he's been very, very instrumental to this discussion. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
All right. Now, let's go on a quick break. And then when we come back, the discussion will continue with another guest in the studio. And he will be also giving us his thoughts on the show, talking about Al-Khali, a member of the civil society organization, and he'll be also telling us what he thinks about the forthcoming election. Stay with us.
Welcome back. You are still watching Daybreak, and we are still discussing security and the Anambra governorship elections. And we have in the studio Abdulrazak Al-Khali, the Executive Director, Organization for Community and Civic Engagement. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome. So yes, the conversation is ongoing about the Anambra election. This morning we're seeing stories about the federal government's proposal, I would say intention to declare a state of emergency in Anambra State given the circumstance. We just heard from the National Commissioner of Voter Education and Information from INEC, Festus Okoye, and he said, well, it's not within the purview of the Independent National Electoral Commission to take a decision on that, but as a member of the civil society organization, from what you are observing, would you say that there's a need for that in that state?
Well, actually, for me, there is no need for state of emergency for now, because we know INEC, they have a track record of conducting election in conflict zones. They have done that a number of times. They have done it in Maiduguri, that is Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa State during the reign of Boko Haram. So it's just a matter for the INEC to deploy the same strategies they have used in the previous election in conflict zones to make sure that Anambra election is not different from those kind of elections. So the issue of state of emergency is not a good idea because militarized elections are not good for our democracy.
Right.
So they should allow INEC to continue to follow the process and make sure this election is conducted on the same date, 6 November. So I'm not a fan of supporting, state of emergency because militarized elections are not good for our democracy.
Okay. Now, with the security situation presently in Anambra State, many will be of the opinion that it will affect the credibility of the elections. What do you think, about the whole situation?
Well, actually, it's unfortunate that the kind of, violence and security threat that is coming from Anambra State. As he said, Anambra State INEC office has been attacked just about some months ago, and part of the non-sensitive materials were destroyed. And they have decided to now start storing in the Owerri, that is Imo State zonal store, which is a good idea. And the only thing, we have to restore the confidence of the electorate. INEC is responsible of conducting the elections. And this conflict and violence is not as a result of any INEC activity, but rather I can call it the responsibility of the politicians, because these same people, the thugs that have been perpetrating this violence, are at one point supporters of the same political elites. And now they have started reaping what they have sown. So it's not the responsibility of INEC to provide the security, but rather instead of the government to declare state of emergency, I will prefer to see government, mobilizing resources in terms of security to make sure that the deployment of the security is strategic. Strategic in such a way that will prevent the occurrence of violence and, and the confidence of the electorate, so that people will come out on November 6th and cast their vote without fear or any intimidation. That's the responsibility of the government. And political parties, of course, they should support the citizens to participate in the election. This kind of the way they are behaving, blame games, saying this and that, I think it's not helping matters.
Okay, now a new commissioner of police was just recently deployed to Anambra State. Don't you think that is a move in the right direction?
I think it's the right move, because what we need at the moment is to make sure that the security is adequately provided for Anambra election. And now the security apparatus in the country, they have leverage, because Anambra election is just one election at the moment. We are not having election across Nigeria, in which we can say we have scarce, operatives, security operatives. So they can have all the mobilization they can do to make sure that they put those people in the strategic places to make sure that they have provided the required security for the free and fair election to be conducted.
Now, how significant is the election in Anambra State, given the fact that we have had, some groups in the state give orders, like, say, sit at home, and you find for fear or maybe for being, in compliance with that order, you would find that people are observing all of that. And this same group have, attempting to make sure that the election does not hold in Anambra State. So how significant is it for that election to hold for the Nigerian democracy?
Well, actually, it's going to be a trial for our democracy. We must make sure that Anambra election is held on 6 November. And it's the responsibility of the Nigerian government to provide the necessary security. We have 30 days now before the election. I think it's a good time for the government to deploy security operatives to make sure that they build the confidence of the electorate so that people will come out and vote in the election. If not, the IFOP or any other group that are calling for the sit-at-home order and trying to prevent INEC from conducting this election succeed, then it's going to be a stain on our democracy. And we don't know what is going to happen in 2023 because this is going to be a trial for us, and all the stakeholders must make sure that this election is conducted and with full mobilization of the electorate to participate. If care is not taken, it's going to, put a bad stain on our democracy because people will now start losing confidence in the electorate and the institutions that are supposed to provide security for them to come out and vote during elections.
Now, given the situation in Anambra State, it looks like there is a need for election observers to be there. So what kind of election observers would be required in that place?
Well, I think in Nigeria we have citizens-led observers group that are very good, that are always very, very willing and ready to take part in election. I believe Yaga Africa Watching the Boards are going to be there in Anambra State. The same thing, TMG, Transition Monitoring Group, are going to be there. So this kind of group will really provide people with information, with update on what is going on there. And they will do all that it takes in terms of monitoring the process and making sure that the election integrity is also observed. Because INEC, they cannot take advantage of the situation to organize election that is not credible. Even the security agencies, they have to do their part. So the election observers we have in Nigeria, more especially Watching the Board by Yaga, the TMG, I know these are credible people. They will observe the process right from the primary election, and they have done that. And this election on the November 6th is going to be also observed, and they are going to observe all the processes. Where they found there are problems, they are going to report it to the relevant stakeholders, and many Nigerians will also know this election, is it credible or not? So we have the right group to observe the election, and I believe they are going to do a fantastic job because that's their specialization.
Now, there's a dilemma here. While government on its part try to make efforts to provide all the security apparatus necessary to ensure safety, for voters and officials of INEC and to ensure the smooth running of the election, you have on the other hand opposition parties who are skeptical about this arrangement, suspicious of these arrangements. Some are already saying that this is an opportunity for the ruling party to rig elections and all of that. How do we, ensure that there is confidence on the part of the opposition parties, even as we pull through with this process?
Well, I think it has become like a habitual thing among Nigerian political parties to accuse one another. And I think it's everywhere, it's all over the world. Political parties, they don't come along. But for this Anambra election, I think they have to look at it from other angle. All the things that are happening, maybe that are generating some concern and contention among the political parties, are things that are happening because of necessity, because of this insecurity in the zone. The movement of the non-sensitive materials to Owerri is as a result of the attack against the INEC office in the Anambra State. Then, so they have to consider that it's not everything. Even the statement made by the Attorney General yesterday, I think it has to do with maybe they have started thinking they didn't rule out of declaring state of emergency. And I believe we have done elections under state of emergency in other states. And I think it didn't affect the outcome of the elections. We have state of emergency in 2011 in Borno State and some other part, and still the party that is not in the ruling party won their elections. So it's not something to worry. But of course, they have legitimate concern when they have seen other things that maybe we are not aware of, they can let out their grievances. And INEC, they have other processes of listening. As he said, they are going to have a stakeholders meeting with all political parties to listen to their views and, of course, to inform them about some of the decisions that are going to take. So I think that kind of platform is the right platform for the political parties to express their grievances. And if they have any evidence of wrongdoing against their own interests, they can present it and also let Nigerians know, not just a rhetoric and other innuendos that can create more tension within the electorates.
Okay. So what role, have you played as a community and civic engagement organization?
Well, is the question...
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, our responsibility is mostly educating the electorates, making sure that they have their PVCs, permanent voter registrations. For the ones that are coming to age, more especially the millennials, we mobilize them to make sure that they have their registration under this continuous voter registration. And we also inform them that the responsibility of the citizens is to participate in the elections. That's the only way you have to elect your leaders, the chosen leaders. And they have to do it with a conscience by looking at what are their philosophy, what are their priorities, not the way we used to do in Nigeria, collecting money or under the influence of corrupt politicians, and in which some they were turning young people into their personal militias, and that's what is really happening. The people in Anambra State or in the southeast, the ones that are taking this kind of actions against state institutions are also part of that problem, because at once they were supporters of some politicians and now they are turning against them. So they find it difficult to control them. So it's part of our responsibility always to educate people, to also organize like a town hall meetings where we invite political leaders elected, mostly elected, to come and attend a gathering with electorates. And we normally establish procedures that you cannot, if we invite an elected officials and he agreed to attend, then we set a ground rules for the participant, the electorate, that you are not going to ask him for any money or any favor, personal favor, and you are not going to abuse him.
So many, particularly millennials, would say we have been voting for quite a while and we don't get to see any changes over and over again. I know some people who have said, some don't even have the permanent voters card, they've never voted at all. Do you have any new initiative, that will help, draw these young people, to vote, as a social responsibility?
Well, you are right. It is quite challenging, convincing Nigerian electorates to continue, coming out in each and every election cycles, casting their vote without getting the desired result. Result in the sense that, dividend of democracy, right, where they can have improved health services, education, water, agri, and the rest. People, I find it difficult to see what is the value of this democracy. That is why if you look at the trend of our election, the voter apathy continues to grow. In the last election, what we have is just 34% of the eligible voters came out in 2019 to cast their vote. It's very, very worrisome, because when you have people, eligible voters, started sitting at home, they don't even care about the democracy. So once you have people that are anti-democracy, they can easily topple the government, and they will have no people, to round and support them. So this is not good for our democracy, and we find it difficult to engage these young people. But we are doing a lot in terms of building their own capacity, making them to be also part of the community, sensitize other people, because we have this kind of huge deficits in terms of political and civic education. And politicians are using that as an opportunity, to do whatever they like, because people, they don't understand how the political process and democratic process is working.
Right. So we're going to get right back to that after this short break. We are discussing security and the Anambra governorship elections with Abdulrazak Alkali, the Executive Director
Organization for Community and Civic Engagement. We'll continue the discussion right after the break. Stay with us.
Suleiman, Aya, and Tari, all from the Sulubawa clan, with a unique wealth of culture and deep love for cattle, which truly reflects their sense of family. But over time, everything changes with no lands for grazing. Experience the incredible story of the Fulani people. Loved ones they must protect, the journey they must take.
All right, thank you for staying with us. And if you're just joining, you're watching Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you from the nation's capital. We have in the studio Abdulrazak Al-Ali, Executive Director, Organization for Community and Civic Engagement. And he's been talking to us about the concerns about insecurity in Anambra State and the coming governorship election. Now, let's just maybe digress just a bit. You know, there are those who have raised concern about INEC's transmission of results. We've heard all from the National Commissioner here who have said, well, INEC has the constitutional powers to determine how to conduct election. But we have those who are saying that, look, we cannot go ahead and legislate over transmission of results in Nigeria electronically because we have issues of network and all of that. Where does your organization stand as far as that argument is concerned?
Well, actually, we are part of the group that really advocates for the electronic transmission of results. And we do that because we believe with electronic transmission of results, it will reduce the level of discrepancies we have and electoral fraud, where election results are being changed over this kind of process before recording into main election sheets. So the electronic transmission of results will provide a much more safety for the process. Once you have your result, transmit electronically. Then the idea of other people to change it or to do some vote from one party to another or from one candidate to another will not even arise because already the result is in the INEC system. And I don't know, INEC a number of times they have said it. They have the capacity and capability to do that. I don't know what is wrong with our legislators for not saying that they will not allow INEC to do that. Even though they have a divided house at National Assembly. House of Brave, they are in support of the INEC to conduct electronic transmission of result. It's only at the Senate where they said they agree with that, but they leave it as an option. Of the option, they said it has to be approved by the NCC, Nigerian Communication Commission, an agency that it has nothing to do with election in Nigeria. And in fact, in our Electoral Act, there was never a time where NCC is mentioned. And secondly, they said with the approval of the National Assembly. While INEC is supposed to be an unfair and independent body, it does not require any institution to say this is how you are going to do your things. And INEC, they have said it a number of times, they have the capability and the capacity to transmit election electronically. Then why can't they allow INEC? And through research, we have seen that majority of Nigerians buy into this process of transmitting election result electronically. It will reduce the instances of inconclusive elections, because that's where the loopholes are. Once cancellation has started taking place after the conduct of the election, if you have your results electronically already transmitted all over the country, there is no way somebody can come and start cancelling results. So this is something that they have to allow INEC to do it. Even though I had the Festus Okoye, he said that they are not going to do it in Anambra, but what they are going to do is to make sure that the result of the polling unit are uploaded to INEC server, which is almost similar to, because when they do that at the polling unit, it is going to be very, very difficult for other people to change it. And that's what we are.
So how do you see that, helping with the process in Anambra State, looking at the whole concerns about safety and security and all of that?
Well, I think it will go a long way in terms of improving the credibility of the election, because once they have started doing that in Anambra and they have uploaded, the result, polling unit result to INEC server, it will go a long way. Even if maybe accidentally there is some attacks against materials, that means the result sent to the INEC server, it has saved. So it's something that I am really in support, and many Nigerians are in support to see that INEC is using innovative technology in order to improve the quality and credibility of our election. I think there is nothing wrong. We are just hoping that the National Assembly is going to allow it to happen, and to remove all these bottlenecks they have put through with approval of NCC. NCC is nothing as far as election in Nigeria is concerned. They have their own responsibility of coordinating communication activities in Nigeria, but not election.
All right. So what are some of the areas of concern, in our legislature as far as Electoral Act and the way elections are conducted in Nigeria are for your organization, the community and civic engagement? What are some of the areas that you feel like there is need for some legislative attention in this Electoral Act?
Well, actually, the Electoral Act, for me, it has a number of beautiful provisions. It has never been that good for Nigerian elections because we have a provision that granted INEC to have their money 1 year before the election, before the national election. They must have their money in their account 1 year before the election, which is enough for them to have all the preparations in good time. It's there in the law. And it also extends the time where political parties can submit their candidates, about 150 days, which is enough for candidate. After submission to INEC, they can go for reconciliations. They can go for reconciliation with other, grieving candidate in their party, because that is one challenge of our democracy. We don't have good internal democracy in our political parties. All the time when elections is around, you can see people grieving, people cross-carpeting from one party to another.
Right.
That's the failure of internal democracy, because we don't have them. All the political parties are like a strong main, driven political parties.
So are you suggesting that we need to checkmate, candidates running from one party to another?
Well, it's not good for our democracy, because that means people, they don't have ideologies, they don't have any principles. Because political parties are supposed to be built based on principles and ideology. But in Nigeria, you cannot say which party have any ideology or principles that they build on and they stick to. People are just cross-carpeting, just like how many times within this cycle of election, there are people, big politicians in Nigeria, they have cross-carpeted from one party to another, not more than twice.
And at this point, you know, there are those who say, well, parties, these two prominent parties that we have in Nigeria, they are a failure. And so there is a need for some kind of third force and all of that. Let's get your own opinion on the issue of, you know, the third force that we have now come to know, or I would say people in political parlance have now come to recognize. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, actually, it's not a good idea for us to have just two political parties, despite all the wars they have created for this country, but still people are sticking to them. And I think it has to do with the resources. People, you know, political parties can only be, you know, driven with the resources. And all other political parties, they don't have resources. And people are always looking to political parties that have power or some influence. And the only parties that have power now, they have governors, senators, and reps, are just 2 or 3 political parties, including some of the maybe AFGA and the rest that have some regional, you know, coverage. So it's not good for our democracy. There is need for the like-minded politicians to start reorganizing, you know, building new political parties based on ideology. But I think it's not an easy job in Nigeria, because even the people that we look at them as role models, they have been talking about the issue of transparency and accountability in governance. But when they started joining politics, you can see they are joining the same old wagon of these political parties that have created too much trouble for this country than solving our problems. So it's something that we have to do it over the time, and we have to engage in constant advocacy and engagement with stakeholders to appreciate that there is need to have more political parties, more platforms that are really genuine and willing to do good for this country.
All right then. Well, thank you so much, Abdulrazak Alkali, Executive Director, Organization for Community and Civic Engagement, here with us in the studio. Thank you for your thoughts on the program this morning.
Thank you so much.
Hope to have you next
Thank you so much.
All right, with that, we've wrapped up this conversation here, and now we'll take a short break, and then when we come back, the show will continue. Please stay with us.
Suleiman, Aya, and Tari, all from the Sulubawa clan, with a unique wealth of culture and deep love for cattle, which truly reflects their sense of family. But over time, everything changes, with no lands for grazing. Experience the incredible story of the Fulani people. Loved ones they must protect, the journey they must take.
You are still watching Daybreak on Trust Television. Right about now, let's take a look at sports in 60 seconds.
Hello and welcome to Trust Sports in 60 seconds. Home-based basketball players have aired their feelings on the lingering crisis that have bedeviled the Nigerian Basketball Federation, as they said their career is in danger. And away from basketball, former Nigerian international Julius Agawa has said that injury to Super Eagles midfield duo Wilfred Ndidi and Ogeneka Otebo is something to think about. Ndidi and Otebo were left out of the Eagles squad for the 2022 FIFA World Cup qualifying doubleheader against the Central African Republic due to injury. Victor Ekpeba believes that the Super Eagles may fall short of creativity in central midfield against Central African Republic in the absence of Alex Iwobi. And finally, Kylian Mbappe said that he informed the Paris Saint-Germain of his desires to leave the club in July and rejected the claim that he told them about his decision at the end of the transfer window. And that's all the top headlines on Trust Sports in 60 seconds. Don't forget to subscribe, like and follow us across all social media platforms.
All right, thank you for staying with us. With that, we wrap up the Trust Daybreak Show, and here we meet every weekday, Mondays to Fridays, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. to have a sense of what is happening in and around us. Well, Zainab, today has been a very, very interesting show, isn't it?
It's been quite insightful. We've gotten to hear from Festus Okoye, the Information and Voter Education with Independent National Electoral Commission. We've also heard from Abdurazak Al-Ghali, who works with the Civic Engagement Organization.
And for those who are just joining, then you have missed, but you can catch up on our YouTube channel and also follow us across all social media handles, just for you to get a sense of what the conversation is like as far as the Anambra governorship election is concerned. Well, thank you for watching the show. Join us again tomorrow for another time on the program. My name is Ayuba Ilya.
And I'm Zainab Bala. Thank you so much for watching.
Bye.